To talk about my book, The Awful Grace of God, Religious Terrorism, White Supremacy, and the Unsolved Murder of Martin Luther King, Jr.
That's why I have to have you come back on the 29th, or if you can make it back from Georgetown on a fellowship. You have a lot going on your plate. You're a full-time teacher at Hightstown High School.
Yes.
AP History. And which book are we going to discuss first?
The book that we have out, The Awful Grace of God, was published in April, and I'm hoping to try and get attention to the fact, more than anything else, that there's a lot that could be done to help bring closure to the King case, more than anyone probably realizes.
Okay, Martin, what is the basic premise?
Well, I guess you would say there are three. The first is that we agree with Congress and their 1978 investigation that there was likely a conspiracy to kill Martin Luther King, and then it likely included James Earl Ray, the man who was convicted for it. We take it further than Congress did and show that there was a network of white supremacists who almost, in a way, were more akin to a modern-day terrorist organization than they were a religious terrorist organization, than they were to the sort of reactionary redneck racists that we think about when we think about the violence of the 60s.
Were they sophisticated, too, in their...
They were far more sophisticated than people realize, at least at the top. I mean, you had your sort of reactionaries on the bottom, the people who were just upset that the so-called Southern way of life was being challenged, but you also had a sort of elite group of people at the top who were far smarter, unfortunately, than people give them credit for.
No, quickly, the FBI, though, I thought said there was no grand conspiracy to the case, and they told that to the King family.
It depends on how you define grand conspiracy. It's been known for quite some time that there was some people connected to James Earl Ray. He was not a lone gunman.
He kept on talking about this man named Raoul, which is fiction. So what was he covering up then?
It's our contention, and then it gets into an area of speculation here, but we believe Ray was kind of playing a double game, and his double game was this. He was responding to a high-money bounty offer when he tried to kill King, and we do not believe he managed to collect that bounty. So he wants to get out of prison and get that money. At the same time, he can't implicate the people who he thinks were really behind it.
What, they'll kill him, or he doesn't want to be
They
a
might
traitor?
kill him, or they certainly wouldn't give him the money after that point,
right.
So Raoul becomes this convenient way of sort of passing off the blame to this mysterious figure who supposedly manipulated his actions. Meanwhile, his actual attorneys, in some cases, one in particular, a guy named J.B. Stoner, were very likely the people who helped plot King's murder.
Yeah, J.B. Stoner, that man was someone who's sinister in his own right.
Oh, he was tremendously sinister. He was behind a rash of bombings, including and especially of synagogues. And that's a big feature of our book, is there was an element of anti-Semitism to this particular group of people we're interested in. And he had tried to kill King on more than one occasion and offered a bounty on King as early as 1958.
So you're saying that James Earl Ray might have been, he was racist, but he was an opportunist. He's a petty thief, somewhat of a loser, always in jail, good at breaking out, and he goes, hey, I'm going to make myself some money.
Right. We believe that what happened was bounty offers were circulating all throughout the federal prison system in the United States. We deal extensively with that. Ray heard about them. Escaped from prison, not necessarily to pursue those offers right away, but when all his other options failed and he started running out of money and he saw how high the bounty offers were going, he then was recruited into, or found his way into the King's.
So did he have direct communications with, say, that St. Louis businessman before he shot King?
Well, so you're referring to what the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1978, there was uncovered, which was that one of the bounty offers in Jefferson City Prison, where Ray was before he escaped, apparently was emanating from a group of racist St. Louis businessmen. Ray may have actually, that might have been the first bounty that Ray heard, but there were others circulating in that prison. But we don't believe that was the exact bounty offer that he was responding to. And in fact, the St. Louis...
No direct connection.
Right. In fact, the St. Louis businessmen may themselves have been fronting a bounty offer that was coming from racist organizations in the Southeast and in Mississippi. And that's where we believe the plot likely emanated from. In terms of direct connections, the first to admit, that's the toughest to establish because Ray spent his life lying. So it's difficult to pin down who he exactly was talking to.
He also, once he's in jail for life, he's got a lot of motivation to say anything and everything.
Correct. And he's got a cadre of people, his attorneys until the day he died, who by everything he says.
He got married in prison, too, which is bizarre.
Right. And
Well, you got married, so.
but what's interesting about that is the woman he married divorced him because she had a conversation with him on the phone. She believed in his innocence, and he started to give her reason to believe that she was involved, and she divorced him after that.
She might not have been all that
interesting.
sharp a cookie herself.
Right, well, she thought he was innocent. She
Hey,
was a
Charlie
courtroom
Manson
artist.
got groupies. It's weird, prison. What about your other books, so we can touch on it?
I'm not so much an author of other books, but I've helped contribute to other books. My co-author has written several other books, including on the Kennedy murder, and the one book that I think if people were interested in that, they'd want to read is Someone Would Have Talked on the Kennedy assassination. I'm in a bunch of other books as cited as a researcher, but until this point in time, I haven't written a book. This is the first
but you're
book.
What's your view on the Gerald Posner book, Case Closed? About
On
Kennedy's-
Kennedy
Yeah.
assassination? I think Gerald Posner's book on the King assassination was a whole lot better than his book on the Kennedy.
Oh,
I think his
you-
book on the Kennedy assassination was highly selective. And I think you could almost get him to admit it, but he took a lot of things out of context.
Right,
You,
he wanted
you,
someone-
you believe in the conspiracy beyond
I
the
believe
lone
Oswald
assassin.
was not alone. Yeah, I think that conspiracy is probably a little bit grander than the conspiracy.
Because there are conspiracy
Yeah.
people, like there's many different Kennedy conspiracies, and it's kind of like
You have
they
a
pick that.
conspiracy of sound
It's
here.
almost like a religion where they want to believe there had to have been a conspiracy.
Well, they can invest
and
it, yes.
they choose any, and they're desperate
and
to find something.
and in fact, we're running into a lot of those folks. People savaged my book before it was even out because of that. Because we just go where the evidence leads us. And if it's not a grand conspiracy, it's not a grand conspiracy.
What's your take on the Kennedy assassination?
I think if you look into Lee Harvey Oswald to any extent, what you're probably going to find is that he managed to find his way, probably not fully consciously, into one of the plots that was against Fidel Castro, and that people within that plot tried to turn when they could not get Castro, turned it on Kennedy.
Because they blame Kennedy for the Bay of Pigs not sitting jets, and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly,
That's the old one.
and in fact, you could
Mafia.
kill two birds with one stone if you kill Kennedy and blame it on Castro.
Do you
which
think?
is what I think?
Do you
probably
think the
happened there.
Italian mafioso Don, what's his name?
Carlos Marcello?
Was involved somewhat?
I believe Carlos Marcello probably had some connection because he was also entwined in those anti-Castro plots in New Orleans.
Now, Lee Harvey Oswald was an expert marksman. If he did anything good in his life, which was he's a failure in most things, he could shoot well. Wasn't it?
Actually, the
a
evidence
Marine.
indicate, but he actually, according to his Marine mates, they actually had to rig his shooting tests in order for him to qualify at the lowest rank of the Marines. But that does not necessarily mean to me that he didn't do the shooting.
Well, what do you
but
think
I'm
of
just-
this latest theory that yes, Oswald shot, but then the Secret Serviceman inadvertently somehow reaching with his gun, the gun goes off, and that's the kill shot. And this is the most recent theory.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the most recent. That's a theory from a guy named Howard Donahue back from the early 1990s, and he argued that that one of the Secret Service agents pulled out his weapon in the trailing car and accidentally shot. I don't really see the convincing evidence of that. I wasn't convinced of it at the time that it came out.
Now, when we had, and again, hopefully you can come back on the 29th, because I can go on forever too. When you had the Warren Commission, do you think that was like, basically like, let's say it's a lone gunman and get on with it, and Robert Kennedy maybe didn't want things to come out, which eventually came out about his brother?
I think there's two things in operation there, and they're both closely connected. The first is that in the case of the Warren Commission, I think you were circumscribed by the very fact that it looked like there was a possibility that Castro and possibly the Soviets were involved. Lyndon Johnson got people on the Warren Commission.
Gerald Ford.
Notably, Richard Russell and Earl Warren, the person who ran it,
Right.
he got them on the Warren Commission by basically telling them this can result in a war that kills 40 million people. So I doubt that they're going to go in the direction of a Castro did it plot if that's in stake. And then Bobby, in my opinion, and I'm within the community of Kennedy folks, I may be the exception here. I believe the Kennedy family was intimately involved in plots to try and kill Castro, and therefore, they were worried that was going to come out.
John Kennedy.
Yes, especially Bobby.
Is it easier to do research on this kind of thing now in the age of the internet?
Oh yes, for our King book, what was probably 20 years of research was done in 7 years, because all of the files on from the headquarters, there are files that we still very much want released. All of the files from headquarters have been fully scanned and text searchable from the FBI. So if I find a lead, I can research and find that lead throughout the stream of files in minutes, whereas it would take me, when I used to do archival research, I did some of that for this too, it would take me months to find one lead repeat itself later on in a file stream.
What's your next project? What are you looking at?
Come back on the show on the 29th if you can.
That's a possibility. Right now, we're actually looking into Bobby's killing a little bit.
Come on, it's a neurotic Palestinian.
Oh, we absolutely,
theory.
now I absolutely fully believe that Sirhan fired those shots. He was not a man.
I believe a guy named Duran did it.
No, it was a neurotic Palestinian who had a lot of issues. A Christian, too. He was a Christian, but...
Right, but he was anti-Israel. But the
oh, I know that, yeah.
But there's some evidence that he may have been put up to it by some other radical students around him, and where that leads.
Well, we can keep on. Please try to come back on the 29th. I'll talk to you via the phone. This has been the great Stu Wexler. I couldn't even ridicule him. He's actually sane. I was ready to...
However, I can ridicule you.
I will go to love. Anyway, thank you very much, Stu, and please try to come back.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Unlike his other guests.
Thank you.